Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. We're just a minute or two away from the New York Open. Um, some pretty nice rotations overnight, actually. Um, we had the big rally up yesterday. Um, a lot of that news was driven by the blow up of situational awareness, which is a hedge fund that was super over leveraged in a lot of AI stocks. The big news coming out of yesterday is that Citadel bought most of their, if not all of their equities portfolio, so that situational awareness could meet margin calls. That resulted in some very strong rallies in tech. We also had earnings for Amazon and Apple. Those went in opposite directions. Apple is down 7 or 8% this morning, while Amazon is up 10 or 11%. The NASDAQ held about a 150-point range in the overnight. We are on a higher time frame outside of value for the week. Edge of value on the top edge is about 28,236. I think that the first target for buyers, if they're going to continue this move this morning, is to look for the weekly high, which is sitting around 28,750. That would get us back into, we're just at the very edge. What it looks like buyers have kind of been struggling with in the overnight is the bottom edge of value from last week. Um, so what I'm kind of looking for here today, as always, I'll let the opening range get set. Um, I trade the 30-minute opening range, so we'll wait until about 9 a.m. Central Time before I start looking for to take any entries. In the overnight, we actually had some decent moves. This imbalance down here, which is right kind of at the bottom of this low volume node. This one sits right at 28,420. We bounced right in front of it last night, and I was actually watching this move via my phone last night, and I was like, that looks like a good place to buy. And by the time I walked in, they had already sent it 70 points. I was trying to get in around 400, and I just let it go. But such as it is, I'm not really a Globex trader, but I do, watch from my phone or pay attention to what the market is doing overnight. That was just not a place for me to get an entry. Buyers strong off the bell here, already looking to take out the overnight high, which is at 28,640. So it's been a good week for the buy crowd. We sold off in the initial part of the week, did not have a good reaction to FOMC, but then all of the stuff with situational awareness, as well as I think a lot of AI names in particular were just getting overextended to the downside. I think that stocks like SanDisk were down over 50% from their high. AMD had pulled back 20 or 30%. So just a lot of the names that have been kind of pulling tech around were just, sold off so hard in the last few weeks. And I think FOMC kind of provided that sort of capitulation moment mixed in with the news coming from situational awareness. How much, of the selling prior to that was actually from, situational awareness blowing up, I don't think we'll actually know. But obviously, the news that Citadel is purchasing their portfolio is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy on Citadel's part. So, you buy this portfolio at a discount, and then you come out and you tell everybody that you bought this portfolio and everything that was selling was because he was getting margin called. And, magically, the thing that you bought 24 hours before is now suddenly up. Like, I think most of that, his portfolio was up at minimum 10% yesterday, with some reaching like 30 or 35%. So pretty good purchase by Citadel. There's always a bigger fish. But I think that provided, the FOMC kind of provided the capitulation down moment. We had Microsoft earnings, which the market reacted very favorably to. I think Microsoft had one of its best days since 2020 yesterday. And so, kind of coinciding factors. And the one other sort of like global factor was that a lot of the volatility in recent months has been driven by Korea. They've had just an enormous number of kind of regular citizens using leverage to buy AI stocks. And as we all know, as with situational awareness, but even on a smaller scale, leverage works until it doesn't. It works great to, make your gains bigger, but there's no way to use it and not make your losses sort of just as violent in the other direction. So, uh, Korean stock market was down, I think, 30%, 25 or 30% from its high in not very many weeks. And their government basically stepped in and said, you know what, I think you guys maybe aren't responsible enough to be buying on buying on margin. And so they have restricted that. So all of these things kind of coincided over like 48 hours. And I think it provided sort of like a zoomed out lens for for capitulation moment and getting this kind of sharp reaction rally in the back. So I think the thing to sort of consider is like buyers are very much in control right now. If they get this above these highs here, the point of control from last week is all the way up at 29,250. That's only 400 or 500 points away. The Nasdaq was up 4%, almost 4% yesterday. So that target wouldn't be out of the question, if buyers can sustain that momentum. I think the other thing to consider from sort of the other side of the coin would be that if this is a lot of short covering coming from situational awareness or a lot of the stocks that were, drastically oversold, how much organic buying is happening, it's kind of impossible to know. But I don't think, particularly right now, I will be looking for longs this morning on pullbacks. This does not seem, it has quite a bit of momentum. We are 27,200. I mean, we're 1,500 points off of the low after FOMC. I also want to scroll back to take a look at this. So so this is Globex open right after FOMC. And I watched this open live. I'm not going to trade Globex open, but especially particularly after earnings. But we got a buy and balance right at the bottom. I don't even know that this downticked when Globex opened, and it was an immediate 300 point rally, and it just kind of never looked back from there. You got one kind of pullback, give sellers a chance to get back out, and then it was off to the races. So just kind of saying that, this definitely has some oomph behind it, and buyers defending. One of the behavior changes you can notice is that these pullbacks, while they were sharp and drastic, didn't really get sellers anywhere. When we've seen Globex definitely sell off, particularly during the Asian session in the last few weeks to a month, where we've got some of these rallies, and then when it sold, it really just like took out the Globex low and just kind of kept bleeding throughout the night. And now what we see is buyers consistently trying to hold higher lows and pushing right off the bell here. So everything I see right now is buyers in control. This doesn't really look so fadeable to me. Obviously, if we start to do something like get below the midline for the session or below the previous day's high and with volume, not gonna not take a short, but definitely not leaning into selling this morning. So let me take a look a little bit at the broader market. And as I've said before, like I don't trade stocks, swing trade stocks or anything like that, but I like to see what's moving the market and kind of get an idea about what the breadth of things are. How healthy is this up move? Is it being driven by one or two names? So obviously at the top right now is Amazon, is up 14%. AMD is back over 500, up about 5%. Google was actually down yesterday. It didn't really rally with the rest of tech, but seems that buyers have remembered that Google exists, and it's up 3%. This morning, NVIDIA is almost back up to 200, up about 2%. And below that, most things are flat, except for Apple, which is down 9%. Market did not care for their earnings. Let's take a look at the S&P's top 500 holdings, which I just have a watch list, almost at a playlist, watch list on Thinkorswim for these. just kind of like general market cap. What are the biggest names? Um, so obviously we talked about Amazon, Google, Meta's getting a bit of a bounce. They sold their earnings pretty hard the other day. Microsoft up another 1.5%. Um, and below that, it's a bunch of Dow stocks, mostly flat. Energy, ExxonMobil is down 2.5%. So there's also been some chatter in the Middle East, perpetual peace deals. I don't know how much the market cares about that at the moment. I think the market might be getting a little tired of, peace deal, no peace deal. And I think when there's uncertainty there, but it seems like there's not really escalation happening on either side, like things aren't getting worse and things aren't really getting better, then the market kind of starts to ignore that news until we get sort of definitive movement in one direction. Um, I'm not going to take this trade because it's still only 10 minutes into the open, but this is a delta zone with an imbalance um, right at the bottom of it as well. So um, if it was not pre-opening range getting set, this would be an area that I might look to scalp. So they're not holding it so nicely there, which is also why I don't trade pre-opening range. Some of those Globex levels are good for Globex, and then um, RTH traders just kind of don't care. So first attempt to go higher by the buyers. We had a little exhaustion at the top there. So now getting a pullback. And, we saw these kind of like pretty steep rotations overnight. The sell side rotations were a lot faster than the buy rotations were back up. And, you're probably getting some kind of version of that here during the RTH open. There's a nice rebid of that level, the little exhaustion at the low there. You also have a buy imbalance that just showed up at about 535. I will say, to be honest, that like I have not traded particularly well this week. I kind of knew going in. First, I had a really good week last week. That's always the first sign that your next week is going to be probably a little bumpier. Um, Nothing crazy, just small losing days each day. I honestly, on the back half of the week, haven't touched it nearly as much because I just, uh, a lot of the trade setups that I like to take just weren't working, or it's just been super choppy. I think it was yesterday I got wicked out a bunch and was just kind of over it. It's just like, this transition between when we're going from like, you know, sell off, selling pops into suddenly when, we're rallying in the other direction. The price action, changes not just in terms of like overall direction, but like how the market responds to imbalances, how the market responds to pullbacks. Because you still kind of have this crossover between we're going up, but there's still some pretty aggressive sellers around. And so what I've seen a lot of this week is, moves like this, like a fairly convincing, this is a 30 to, that's a 45, almost 50 point pop. And then it just getting sold right back down. Um, Buyers have been able to sort of recover some of those moves, but from a scalping perspective, you know, that's not that's not ideal. Um, you want to be able to see those reactions, have them come back, or at least how I trade. I want to see a good buying reaction if I'm buying a pullback. And then I want to see that level hold on the reverse side. And they've just been really, really choppy. I mean, it makes sense with everything that's been going on this week. It would have been a crazy week without situational awareness and Citadel story and the Korean stock market. So you can just kind of throw it all into one big sort of chaotic week. We had FOMC as well. Um, no changes to rates, but there were rumors going around that they were going to raise rates, which I, I I don't get too much into the news of that, but I have a hard time believing that this particular administration is going to be chill with raising rates, especially when the market is in the midst of a sell-off, um, which is what it was. around Wednesday. So sellers putting in some work here. That's a solid 300 point pullback. You're seeing another one of those really fast pops, um, trying to get sold right back down. So it is moving really, really fast right now. So watch your size. If you're using stops, they might need to be a little wider than usual just based on how fast this is moving around right now. Kind of interested to see how they react to this imbalance down here at 420. They didn't quite get it back all the way. They got to 430 when they pulled it back near the overnight. This is one of the levels I was looking at in the overnight that I was not a part of that move. So let's go take a look at. So 420 is right here. And just, to note about how this study looks at imbalances, we have them split between the overnight session and the RTH session. And, so like a overnight imbalance level, you'll see this says -60 here. Granted, it could have traded through there a few times, so maybe it was originally a bit bigger. But, maybe -60, like that level of imbalance doesn't show up during RTH because the trades are just like so much bigger. Um, but for the overnight session, relatively speaking to the rest of the overnight session, 60 contracts at one price is probably enough to flag an imbalance, which is why you're seeing that level. But it's just worth keeping in mind that, um, we're now trading during a time where there's um, like bigger sellers, bigger buyers, just sort of bigger participants during the US Open. Um, so you can see them trying to hold 420 here. It's really, really fast moving, so it's not a clean hold right now, but there are definitely some buyers interested here at 420. They got run over right there, though. That's below the previous day's high. The other thing to consider is like, when most of the AI stocks were up 15, 20, 30% yesterday, is that, you know, profit taking is a thing. Doesn't mean that people are just like shorting this into the ground, but, I'd assume there'd be some profit taking um, on a lot of these names. All right, so as we pull back, let's kind of take a look at what's below. Not a lot. You're kind of moving through this super low volume area for the week. Like your point of control is still down at just below 28K. Um, and top edge of value, which lines up with like this top and just a little bit lower with this top, and this top is like, call it from like 28,250 to like 28.75. My concern with the lower part of that one on the 75 is that you get real close to the point of control. I think that we've seen an enormous amount of volume done at 28K. You've also had some pretty violent moves off of 28K. Like that was about what they got it above when they rallied during FOMC. They got it just about 100 points above and then just absolutely knifed it on the way back down. So if you're short, you happen to catch a top here, I think my first target would be like 28 to 30, if you're looking to hold longer than 200 or 300 points here already. So pretty steep on the downside. Also check the violence on those pops and then immediate sell-offs. So there are some people itching to get out. Also want to check to see, Fridays sometimes have data releases at 9 a.m. and I actually haven't checked yet. So let me just take a look at the calendar. All right, so we have ISM and PM manufacturing PMI at 9, as well as JOLTS and ISM. Let's see. Let me just see if those are. Nope, those are next week. That's one of the things that I actually really hate about TradingView, which is like just a sort of cheap place to get an economic calendar. But like they always put it at the very, like whatever the next event is always at the very top, which makes me think that it's today. So those are actually for Monday is ISM. So there's no data coming out this morning at 9 a.m. Um, so apologies there. That's one of my least favorite things about their app for that is it just, you know, I feel like you should just have a calendar that says today, the next date, and then if you see today and there's nothing on it, then great, there's no events. But when you put the topmost one and the most one is actually flagged in red at 9 a.m. right now, but then right above it says, oh, August 3rd. Like it's just not helpful, you know. How do we get information and get it into my brain quickly and accurately? That's not a way to do it. You're seeing another imbalance here right in front of the overnight low, or right in front of this overnight imbalance near the low. But so far, every single one of these violent pops has had that happen to it. Wow. This volatility is high enough that like I might even let it settle in more after 9 a.m. Because I think when we roll over to 9 a.m., I'm not sure that it's going to slow down. But this volatility is a little too high for my comfort level. We're going to need to sort of establish an area that it wants to trade. I mean, this is a 500 vol candle right here that took, call it 4 seconds, 4 seconds to happen and has a 50-point range. So check yourself. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. And for me, the other thing is like I like to be able to sort of read the depth of market to, once I get to an area where there's already been some order flow signals, some imbalances, or other MGI, overnight low, whatever it might be, previous day's close. I want to be able to see what it does when it trades around that level, but like, you know, I can't I can't see what it's doing when it's moving as fast as it's moving. It's so thin that like it's just screaming across my depth of market. So and hold is going to be a very relative term, particularly with the Nasdaq right now. So sellers starting to lose their edge just a little bit. You'll see that candle coloring start to fade as the aggression starts to switch over. But you haven't really had a bounce yet. So like I said, not trading before 9 a.m., but this imbalance at 420 might be a reoffer level on the first sort of real pop here by the buyers. And they held that overnight imbalance basically to the tick if you were bold enough to step in front of that rocket ship. And if any of you who are watching, if you traded this week, um, feel free to pop in the chat and just say, how you did this week. I'm kind of interested to see. Some people really thrive in like earnings level volatility, and I know some other people, myself included, really struggle with it. So it'd be interesting to know just kind of how each of you has done. Um, I'm here because I like to stream, like to hang out with you guys. Um, Streaming actually helps part of my process because it slows me down, takes a little bit of my monkey brain out of it that likes to push buttons. Um, but I wouldn't probably trade earnings week if I was like, if I had my choices about it. It's just you get used to something moving around in a certain way. And when you have things like earnings, and then you add in FOMC, and then you add in all the other news that we talked about this morning, like things just start moving in ways that are unpredictable. So the top edge of value is coming up real fast. It's about 75 points away, which in the current volatility, if they just keep it at that rate, is probably going to be here in about 3 minutes or so. Getting a rebid of a couple of imbalances, one from the overnight and attempting to rebid one from here, but buyers not with a lot in the tank here this morning. Opening range is set in about 5 or 6 minutes. There's a nice push from the buyers. One of the streams earlier in the week, we talked about one of our members mentioned that they were trading on sim in this environment, and I don't really trade on sim because I don't follow any rules, and it doesn't serve any purpose for me, other than I guess protecting against losses. Um, but when the depth of market starts moving like this, and we're doing that much range that quickly, it makes me not want to put on risk, particularly in a small account, because I just have to use such a wide stop to make sure that I'm not like, so I can like give enough room for my idea to even play out and not just get stopped in sort of like, you know, range volatility. I'm gonna look at this 420 level. It's still pre-opening range, and this needs to chill the fuck out. This is too fast for trading, um, for how I trade. So they already got one rejection off of this like just over 400 level and kind of getting rejected again. That imbalance is still at 420, so they try to push it a little bit further, kind of lines up with this low from the overnight pivot low before they pushed it to a new high. You didn't get a lot of volume on that push through the low. You got a pretty nice taper at the bottom there, some imbalances, but we're also trading so fast that like that's another reason why They didn't do a lot of volume down there. Didn't spend any time. While this is still trading like a maniac, I wanted to share something cool that we're working on internally, which I think you guys will like, is um, I kind of didn't realize whenever I started doing these streams, like how much I rely on, not just the order flow signals that show up with Scalper IQ, but like aligning those with depth of market activity and like watching the price ladder to see where buyers are holding, all of those kinds of things. And I found myself talking about it on stream quite a bit, like when I'm taking entries or looking for exits and that kind of thing. And so I feel like it's a concept that is like not talked about a lot. Like there's not a lot of like depth of market reading. And I mean, to be fair, it's moving fast enough right now that I think most people have a hard time reading what's going on in there. But we're working on building. You can actually see this study here at the top, which is just an internal study. This isn't for external use, but we're basically recording the price ladder at every single update, and we'll be able to take that data and actually put it through a replayer, and so we can scrub and we can like slow down speed. Um, we're working on getting like certain flags so that like when big orders get pulled, so that we can actually go back to like a pivot low, pivot high, and actually see kind of what happened there, or like see what happened, or if I talk about something on stream that I'm like, oh, I see buyers that are stacking here, or we're trying to defend this level, we'll actually have, I think we're going to try to do, 5 to 7 minute walkthroughs of different setups that we kind of see as they play out on the depth of market. I think that'll just be interesting for people to watch and maybe add like another sort of arrow in your quiver for setups. Still working on the development piece of that, but some of the initial tests look pretty cool. But um, it's an incredible amount of data. I mean, we're recording um, MBO as well, which is market by order, which basically means that, right here we see like 52 contracts, but you don't actually know whether that's 52 one seller or whether it's a bunch of small sellers all at once. But MBO will actually show you that the sort of like separation between those orders. Um, Sellers should be a little careful here. That's another push through the low and these imbalances that didn't get a lot of volume there. I wish this was bouncing closer to the top edge of value. We're kind of in no man's land here, but that's two very sharp probes through the low that didn't go anywhere. So you start to get momentum back to the upside. But man, there are still some really aggressive sellers right now. So yes, so we're quite excited about the depth of market replay. I'll post some early screenshots of our prototype into our members only Discord channel later, so you guys can take a look at kind of what that will look like. And it won't just be like, we won't just be like sort of like uploading the replay. Like it'll be me on camera, sort of like walking through, what the replay is capturing, how we're interpreting it, how it's lining up with other things on the chart. Very similar to what I do here, but just with like an extra tool so that like, if the depth of market is moving as fast as we're moving right now, we can slow it down to like quarter speed or half speed or whatever it is and kind of replay certain moments, um, so that like you can actually, I think, see what buying or defending a level or uh, breakouts look like. Um, so I'm going to scroll my depth of market down here to top edge of value, which is 20, called just below 250. I have no interest in stepping in front of this um, to buy a dip, but this is the first place that I would like to see some defense by the buyers if this is gonna, not drift back down to 28K, which is, I think, a very magnetic target if they get it much closer. I see the question in the chat for permanent plan. Can you clarify what you mean? Getting a little bit of absorption here at the low, but yeah, even if I wanted to be shorting this, so far there's like, you got one small bounce, and that was pre-opening range, and so otherwise we're just selling. That's basically just creeping back into value on a higher time frame for the week. It's basically right where they're trading right now. I think it's like 250-ish. Everything is not an exact number right now. And that's another quick pop that got sold very hard and fast. And just for how I trade, I need a level to sort of show itself. Like in this case, this was pre-opening range, so I wouldn't have been taking it. But like, you got one hold. The market kind of shows its hand here, right above 400, and then you get, a reoffer of that level. Like to me, then you can like manage risk. But if it's just gonna go like vertical or like these pops here, like I I have no system for myself for how to get into these moves. So if they're directional, if it's like a spike up or a spike down, like it looks nice on a chart afterwards, but like I'm not gonna be a part of it. Yeah, this is like bottom fallout straight to 28K. Like great target. Great target call out by me somewhere earlier in the session, but like good luck catching it. That's down 500, almost 600 points from the high. Nice little zoom out. It's a little steep. That exhaustion marker, it printed live, but, you know, wasn't taking trades 5 minutes into the open. But boy, sellers are pissed. Probably interested in some type of a mean reversion trade, but like you can't get in front of this. And this is another reason that like I don't particularly like trading this week. Like this isn't normal price movement. Um, so if you guys have ways of jumping into trades like this, then happy for you. I hope you all are making money, but this is outside my scope of being able to get in. So we have this imbalance level here from yesterday sitting at 2860. Now, I think the my concern with this level is that 28K, which is where the point of control for the week is right below it. So a bounce right in front of it, while possible, I don't know how long it would last. But just to demonstrate that we can extend some of these across session, right? And that's actually the strongest level from yesterday. Um, Coincided with a nice little break and pop, and eventually that was like kind of the start of the buying that ended up taking it up to new highs. But kind of a spot to watch here on the way down. I am not just going to bid this level. I don't expect it to, if it does hold, I don't expect it to hold cleanly. This is moving incredibly fast. These bubbles that are showing up here are from our phantom study. You're starting to get some new lows on negative delta. Um, so, or sorry, in this case, new lows on positive delta. So you're starting to see some buying come in. Sellers not fully pressing into these lows, but you know, I don't. I have a like a I don't know why I don't do it, but like I have a 5 minute chart that's like up on my phone as my default for looking at TradingView. Um, because sometimes it's like very easy to get super granular when you're in this like 500 vol chart world, where I think the order flow signals themselves are actually better. Um, but it can be, you can get a little lost in like how steep this sell off is because you're zoomed in at such a sort of like micro level. But like I just pulled up a 5 minute chart on TradingView and it is steep. So uh, something that has gotten me into trouble in the past and still continues to be probably the top thing that I work on in my own trading is um, in the past I've had a bad habit, which I've ironed out a lot of, but bad habit of trying to catch sort of like exact lows. Um, and what I've really been working on is like this is a nice move. Like this is a nice bounce. But there was no real retest of any of this. Like it was basically just like hit 28 100 and then rally almost 100 points. Um, so I need it to show me there's buying there and come back and test it a couple times and then I might try to take a position and go once I have a level to kind of lean on. But in my opinion, trying to like catch this, even if you have, and this is just my opinion, some people may do this and it's great. Like, I think that the idea of like having like the quote perfect level and just throwing a bid or an offer there is like furu shit. Like, I think people throw that stuff up on social media, and I think that's a terrible way to execute live, in my opinion, because I think that you can have the most perfect looking level on a higher time frame chart and the market can get to it and just like absolutely not give a shit. So, in my opinion, if 28 100 happened to be your level, you know, I think you got to be more interested in what happens the second time or the third time or maybe even the fourth time depending on what time frame you're trading. Um, I think that that's just a more prudent way to trade, but I know there's a lot of people that trade different ways. I know there's breakout traders that just like when it goes through a level, like they're just, slamming the bid or slamming the offer. And it works for some people. And obviously, a lot of people do it because we're trading like this and we get this much movement down. So somebody's initiating that price movement. But for myself, I want to kind of be able to manage my risk and lean on a particular area. And if we're just going to like spike low, like, how many different pops in here looked like quote unquote organic buying? But if you think about it from the fact that you're like, okay, I want to see some buying and then I want to see it hold the next time, hasn't done it, a little bit here, but really hasn't done it. So, like, we'll see if this plays out here. I don't particularly want to buy this here in front of this imbalance from yesterday, and I think they're probably have the momentum to get this closer to 28K, in my opinion. So, but like if they get this back up above 150, 160-ish on this push, that makes me more interested in this 28 100 level. Like buyers have kind of, you know, come in here and said, hey, this is no further, at least for the moment, at one particular price. But feels heavy to me. So I'm going to scroll down to 28 100, which they might beat me to it, but there's a big buyer here too. So I don't know whether that was sitting there before they tried to break it. Looks like probably because the low is literally 2 ticks above that. So sometimes you can get that type of reaction, where it's like liquidity from a distance, like coming from a far price away, kind of is a magnet. But then it sometimes is a little bit of support when it gets there. Like we sold all this strong. Who wants to throw 100 contracts directly into a new low on NQ, right? So market hesitating just a bit there. Nobody wants to be the first one to take a bite at that. And see if they fill this buyer. Yep. And that's that imbalance that's showing up there. It actually flagged the imbalance. There was a larger buyer at 90 that we picked up rather than the one at 28 100. But that's still like they're trying to get it back above 28 100. Um, Getting a little bit more interested in this level just because of those large delta prints. Like somebody's about to be very offsides if this starts to go back up. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the term offsides, if you haven't heard that before, it's just in a directional sell-off move where we get really, really extended, and then you start seeing size thrown by whichever side is in control. Um, you can get a sort of violent reaction in the opposite direction as somebody who sold 170 contracts here and 110 contracts here, only 15, 20 points off the low. Um, little capitulation, at least temporary capitulation, and get a quick reactionary pop. So I'm kind of watching this 28 100 level, maybe for a quick scalp. If they continue to kind of hold in this area. It would be a really quick scalp, so probably my target would be probably around where price is right now, like near these near the tops of these. It's like probably stop into profit if we go above 50 and then look for maybe a push closer to 200. So stop would be probably just new lows. So if it's 28 100, yeah, risking about 20 points feels about right. We'd probably lean into this sell imbalance both here at 28 100 for entry, and perhaps the 28.90 for defense, but they're getting pretty far away from it. That might have been the offsides move all at once. But like this is kind of like I didn't take this trade. It was just too fast still, but this is kind of what I'm talking about for like holding a level, right? So like you get some buying off of it, you get a little bit of buying off it. I might have liked that to go a little higher. Um, then you get some imbalances on a new low and no momentum through, and then you get this more distinct pop here. Did any of you catch any part of this? Sometimes I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm just watching this thing move around, but I just haven't seen any. I haven't seen anything worth touching yet. Like the 28 100 level was about the first thing that we kind of held a little bit, but it got away from me. Oh no, don't catch it the wrong way. And your bot tried to exit at the low and accidentally got short. Is your bot trading 170 in Q contracts? Yeah, I've dabbled in algo trading. People think that like it sort of like makes sense. Like I'm a developer, wouldn't there be a reason for for me to lean into algorithmic trading? But like the hard part about it is like one, it's not as easy as it looks. Not as easy as it looks at all. Um, you know, for think about like as many like sort of like human execution errors that you might have, like, oh, you click the sell button instead of the buy button, or you put a limit order in when you thought you were putting in a stop, like whatever it might be, right? Um, you know, when you're not only are you at the whims of your own code for doing algorithmic trading, which can have its own set of errors, but then you have like exchange stuff that will come through. So like you'll get, bad fills, or you'll get fills that, you didn't try to get, you weren't trying to get at that price, or you'll get some type of internal platform error. So like there's not just your code, but then there's like the actual platform execution. So like Motive Wave or NinjaTrader, wherever you're sort of like coded, can also have its own set of errors. So it's its own beast, and that's like not even talking about if the sort of like hunt for consistent edge, which there's so many algorithms in the market, um, by people who have a lot more money than I'm sure anyone watching this stream, myself included, have. And so you're really fighting against some of the brightest minds and also the deepest pockets of Wall Street. So I read some statistic the other day that there was a research group that looked at looking for edge, like consistent edge in order flow. So that would be like, reading delta, looking at the depth of market. And this is only speaking to sort of like an algorithmic perspective. We know that like delta and imbalances and exhaustion and absorption and all those things like actually provide um, discretionary entries. They just have to line up with other things like, but on their own, um, they found that like most order flow signals lasted less than a second for edge. And so if you're a retail trader who is like coding your own automated strategy, you are you are already playing in the NFL when you are in the Pee Wee leagues. It's just not worth it. You would be hunting for like a couple of points on the Nasdaq. And so somebody's going to be executing faster than you. Somebody with size is going to be executing bigger than you. So that's another reason that I've kind of not done a ton of work in the algorithmic trading world. I have tried it off and on and had various successes with some types of automated strategies, but you know, pick your poison. Do you want to fight yourself of like accidentally putting in orders at the wrong place or execution errors there, or do you want to fight digging into code and be like, why is this thing buying here when I didn't tell it to buy here? So it's not easier. Sort of that's the summary. Buyers getting a bit of a relief rally here. Um, the one thing I'll say is that like this is a pretty like step down towards this taper towards 28,100, but like they're kind of creating this sort of like flat profile, and there's also like a pretty distinct gap right now from 2850 all the way back up to 329. So if buyers can get momentum back over 2850, it might be a real fast trip back into the opening range for the Nasdaq. I'm still looking to see if we come back to 28,100 and hold in that area until something else shows up. I would also be interested in maybe a reoffer if we poke our heads back up into the opening range low. But at the moment, we're just kind of violently chopping here. Another thing to mention about the about the offsides idea, um, while like they can mark lows or highs temporarily, I in my experience, a lot of times they're sort of like temporary covering moments inside of a bigger move. So they are scalpable, but don't necessarily, like, in my experience, consistently mark like a low or a high. So if I were to take a trade that, like, let's say that I had taken this trade or gotten filled here around 28,100, um, I would have probably already scalped this out, or at least have stop in profit. Because my sort of feeling there, man, somebody threw some size there. Get that 500 contracts on the way back up. That level is going to stick out like a sore thumb there. You also got this aggressive move from selling to buying, which is why you have that marker there. It's not necessarily like a buy or sell marker in terms of execution. We uh, discourage people from trying to read any of our signals like that. You want to look at them inside the larger context. So I'm not taking this. I'm not taking this as a long trade, just because we're sitting kind of in the middle of this chop here down the bottom. But What it does have going for it is like if you wanted to put your stop somewhere underneath that imbalance that we just saw show up at 220, and we talked about potentially a fast trip above, really like above 260 to back into the opening range. So it's not the worst setup if you are a momentum trader. I come back to test this imbalance right here. Let's just take a peek at the higher time frame. So we're like literally right back at the edge of value for the week, just coming at it from the underside this time. If we zoom out, this is like the main, like this is a much more of an actual bounce than this one was. So I feel like when I was sort of like learning how to use volume profile, I felt like it was sort of a nasty trick that they're like, well, low volume nodes are areas of support or resistance, or price can rip through them very quickly. I'm like, So I guess the good news is you find out if you're wrong really quick, but that always felt not so helpful to me. Still interested in this imbalance level that they kind of tried to hold a few times here. It's also right at the Globex open. It's like call it 317-ish, 320-ish for a potential reoffer on this bounce. Would probably going to end up scalping it off in this environment. If we get into profit and get some momentum down off of that level, I might look to 28K if I want to try to hold for longer, but I'll be trailing my stop um, if that's the case, because there's just a lot of big tech stocks that are up right now. And so people like to buy things that are already up. So if we start to rally, wouldn't surprise me to start getting some momentum back up. Here's that 28,500 level. They bounced it twice, like literally right at it. Look at that move off of that. Held to the tick and sort of like instant 40, almost 50 point move. I was watching it, but I'm not that fast. think it's finally, I mean, it's still moving around super violently, but we're at least like kind of holding still a little bit. There's that level that they just lost. See if they try to get it back above there. Yep. Back below again. Above. Might try to buy it if they show it to me. Stop will be right at 200. Target will be the right before the opening range low, which is sitting around 295. So like 4-to-1 risk to reward there, about 75 to 80 points. It also could be a very quick stop out just because we're moving around so fast. So nope. Somebody else had the same idea. I didn't get in that time. I wanted to see it touch one more time just because it's moving so fast. But like that's more like a trade that I'm going to be able to get into. Um, you have this level. There's like one. If we zoom in just a little bit, there's like a push through it. There's a touch, touch, touch. Barely get below it and immediately rebid it. That's how I would like to take my entries. Um, Price is moving so fast right now that like I was a little slow to get a bid in, but that's how I like to see a level hold when we're talking about holding imbalances. I don't know that I will look at trying to buy it a second time here. This basically got to pretty close to where I'd be taking profit. I'd be taking profit probably in the 90s here, like right where this is at now. So nice trade that I wasn't a part of. But I think if they come back down again, I don't know that I expect the same type of reaction off of that level again. Open to it, see what it does when it gets there, but like um if I'm like, let's say that like, this happens and I like click and put an order in, and price gets like 40 points away from me, like I'm gonna pull my bid, and then wait and see when it comes back, uh, like what it does when it gets there. Um, because it's like you got the reaction that you wanted, right? So like the next one is a different trade. Still think that this pop back into the opening range, right into the Globex open and the previous day's close, and this imbalance level might be a nice place to look for a reoffer. I would like for them to trade there for a few minutes. You can see a big seller there at 300, and you see some other larger liquidity stacked here on the way through there. So I'm just going to scroll up into this, like we'll call it, yeah. So like this imbalance is that's a buy imbalance right here from the overnight, 28,317, right where my sell is. Um, but it's going to be a zone. If they pop it back into the opening range, you're going to see some covering. Um, so let's see. And on a higher time frame, that was a pretty deep probe back into value. They basically held the top of the FOMC move, almost to the tick. Um, Basically where FOMC rallied super, super hard and fast over 28K before getting stomped. Um, and to be fair for the buyers, and or for sellers that are covering, that's kind of your first pullback after this crazy rally that started in the middle of the night on Thursday. So I think it makes sense that you have some buyers stepping in, or at least some short covering if people are trapped at the speed of yesterday's move. So just kind of consolidating here below the opening range low on NQ, 30-minute opening range. So going to look at a potential push to here. I have some different MGI. Uh, I wasn't super familiar with that term up until like maybe a year ago, but like it's just market generated information. So that's your opening range low, your open, your close, your mid, your previous day's high, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so I have a little bit of that. I have the opening range low that's just around 300. Then I have the open that's at 317, and then the close that's at 333. Plus this big buy imbalance from the overnight. It's also the first area that buyers tried to hold during that super steep sell-off. So I like it for a reoffer, but like I've said multiple times on this stream about this particular week is things are not moving the way that they normally move due to all of the things that have happened on top of earnings this week. So um, I'm very much in I'm okay to miss the move mode. Um, and sellers defended that opening range low to the tick there and already back to that 500 imbalance. I'm probably not going to buy this, but let's see how it holds this time. So that's through a little bit. They got a lot of momentum coming down into that level. I'm going to try to hold again. They still see it. They still see it, but that's coming off of a rejection off the opening range low, so going to be pretty careful with it. If I try to long this here, I'm not giving it very much of a leash. My stop will be at 200, and I'll move my stop into break even if we get back above 250 and get 30 points in the money in this type of volatility. And woe is me for not taking that level. It's another 50 points off that imbalance. I mean, to be honest, I'm more just interested in this like reoffer idea just because there's like more things that line up with it. This is just a single imbalance in space, but boy, the market is very much respecting that right now. I mean, you took no more than 9 points of heat off of if you were buying right at 220. So it is worth noting that on this bounce here, you notice how the candle coloring has not rolled back over. So it's lighter buying on the way back up than it was in the selling on the way down here. Just kind of gives you a quick glance to let you know that buyers aren't hitting it as aggressively as sellers were hitting it down. Um, doesn't mean that buyers can't sort of like roll it back over, but I'm still going to scroll back up to the area that I'm interested in executing in, which is in this like 317 to 330-ish area. Also, when I'm streaming, I trade my own accounts. So I won't be taking I don't like get on here and like just take trades for the sake of taking trades on the stream. So um I'm putting I'm putting real risk on. I mean, I'm trading 1 micro, so it's not like insane amounts of risk. But even in this volatility, 1 micro on a small account is a lot. So, but just saying that if you're watching and you're like, oh my gosh, hasn't taken a single trade. Yeah, it's super fast and super violent. And um, this level here is honestly probably the first best trade. We're gonna get up into that's a poke back into the opening range low for NQ. So still looking at basically this kind of whole zone from like previous day's close to the opening range low with the imbalance right in the middle. So as a potential place for a reoffer. Laughing because somebody in our Discord was noting this level creating quote generational wealth. Agreed. And I missed it each time too. And it gave me the exact looks that I wanted and I didn't take it. So it's going to happen sometimes. Also, if you weren't watching the first part of the stream, I've had kind of a not so like I haven't traded very well this week, or I think I've traded okay. I haven't really made any money, so I'm taking it a little slower than usual. I hate this week. Just this volatility, like what we're doing right now, is like 20% too fast for me. Like I like it trading fast because I hate holding trades for a really long time, but it gets to be a certain level where it's like just too much. All right, so we're gonna come test this imbalance here. And it's also sitting right at the Globex open. So first touch there, they sold it. And worth noting that it's a Globex level, so less volume. in terms of the ratio of imbalance. And they just pushed it right through there. Last edge of where I'm looking to potentially fade this. They need to get it back below now. Back below this 317, 320-ish level if I'm going to be interested in potentially fading it. So, per usual, I'm going to try not to be the first person into this trade, so I'm going to let it trade around this area a little bit. And there's a decent chance that it just like rallies past here. And if it wasn't creating generational wealth the first time, here's 220 to 320. So got about 50 points each time it popped, and then you're getting about 100 points this time. Getting trolled in my own Discord about not taking that last trade. I see you guys. I'm waiting for the reoffer that I can get stopped on the way back up, obviously. I will say that like my whole week, I took trades that looked exactly like this, and it was like hold, hold, Zack gets in, flush. Um, so that's trading for you. You got to take it every time, and I didn't take it this time, and the market is gonna punish me and probably go back to the highs because I didn't take that trade. Got to listen to my own coaching. I think I talked about on Wednesday that like, you know, a few bad trades or a few bad days, as long as you're managing risk, like doesn't actually like mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Like your strategy, if you have a strategy for how you like to get in, like this is how I like to see levels hold. Um, those type of things like don't die overnight, but they might have a less good chance of working during weeks like this where the volatility and the news cycle is like really, really different than usual. So this is right on the edge of where I'm interested for still reoffering this area. If it gets much further past it, not as interested. So I want to see it trade below 317 and then not be able to get back up. So if I get in around 317, my stop will be uh call it 340-ish. Um and first target will be getting back outside the opening range low. Like if we get back outside the opening range low, I'll probably move my stop down just a little bit, like above this imbalance level. I'm getting a little bit of absorption here. Buyers are hitting it and not getting anywhere, but that's good though. I appreciate people calling me out. Um, you were very right. I did not take that trade when I said I would. I feel like there's an office gif in there somewhere. It's like it all just happened so fast. So I think it was on Wednesday that I talked about trade sequencing. So talking about like if I want to fade this level, like I have a sequence. Like we got to get here, then I want to see it get below it, and then I want to see it not be able to get back above it. Um, so that's below it. Now let's see if, all right. See if we come back to it now. Broke below it. Don't you just go without me. So still waiting for it to come back and revisit this. Getting away from me. So I got the first half of what I wanted, which is a rejection out of this area. Now just looking for an entry. I'm going to go ahead and stick an offer. Stop is, this is going to get too far. If this gets back below, like gets out of value, I'll pull my offer. My offer is 320 and my stop is 340, but I think if it gets below 50 here, I'm gonna go ahead and cancel those for now. That was like, my stop would already be in profit, or like probably sitting back inside just below the opening range, so now they're gonna come back real hot. I'm gonna try it. Came back up with quite a bit of momentum, but let's see. All right, we're short at 320. Stop will move to break even if we get back below 280. Just looking to see if we can get a similar reaction. Let me turn off my trade markers. Probably going to be stopped here in just a second anyway. All right, nice, that's helpful. Still didn't quite get to, I got to 285. It's back below the opening range low, still keeping my stop in the same place for right now. Sellers tried it and didn't work very well. Ultimate target is going to be the same level that they kept holding down here, 220. Just see if we can take it from imbalance to imbalance. But Got some reactions off of this level. Just need to see if sellers are willing to initiate here. Sellers defending above 320. That's helpful for us, but we're going to need some initiation lower. Now we're just chopping around my entry. So I said stop to break even. We'll do stop to break even at 275 if we can get there. It's 85. Come on, sellers. You did all the damage in the morning. Can you hold it below something now? I'm just getting a pop back up now. I just want to give it enough space so I'm not moving my stop back into break even while they're still kind of like thrashing around in this area. Like small scalps that you could have taken off of this level, like I could have taken this off a little lower, but mostly at like 2 to 1 risk to reward, which I like to get a little bit better than that if I can. If you guys are watching the stream, feel free to give a like for me taking the trade that I said I was going to take the second time. The one that will probably result in a stop out, just because that's how things work. But um, yeah, I agree. The 285 buyer is not helping my cause. It's also because I said I would move my stop to break even at 275. Um, Come on. There we go. We've traded 275. Stop is at break even. So slightly below break even. I'll pay for my fees. Um, I just want further than that. I think this imbalance level sticks out like a sore thumb. But if there's going to be a buyer sitting in between me and that, there's not much to do with it. You know, and at 75 is basically like 50 points in the money as they run it back towards my stop right now. But um, yeah, at that point, the trade idea to me has kind of played out, and And there goes my stop. NQ didn't quite get there. I think it's going to here in just a second, but I got wicked out on the micros. It would have got my stop either way. So, need to cancel my other stop though. Don't want to get filled there. So yeah, so it held for a minute. I think it was a good, like good level to look at. But yeah, as one of our members talked about, there was a buyer sitting at like 285 that did not let things go any lower. So I think that's going to be it for the stream, guys. Like I said, give us a like. We're thinking about adding a Monday stream as well. So if that's something that you guys would like to see, um, yeah, pop a like on here, and we'll consider doing 3 days a week. So we've had some good feedback so far that people find it helpful, and I think this is still watching me trade live with the Scalper IQ tools. Um, I think is better than any type of like documentation that you have to go read. So hope everybody enjoys their weekend. Stay safe in the volatility. And thanks for tuning in. Cheers.